The first door appeared after the desert collapsed. For thousands of years, the Ora Salt Basin had been considered empty. No ruins, no fossils, no evidence that anyone had ever lived there. Then, during a routine geological survey, an entire section of the salt floor fell inward. Beneath it was a staircase. The steps descended into darkness at an angle too perfect to be natural. They were made from a black material that reflected no sunlight and showed no signs of erosion. At the bottom stood a circular door. There was no handle, no lock, only a shallow imprint shaped like a human hand. When Dr. Lena Ors placed her palm against it, the door opened before she touched the surface, and somewhere far below the desert, millions of lights turned on. The excavation team expected a tomb. What they found was a city-sized archive buried beneath 600 meters of salt and stone. Its corridors stretched farther than their scanners could measure. The walls were smooth, dark, and cold, but faint lines of pale light flowed beneath them like veins. There was no dust, no damage, no air movement, yet the structure had been buried long before the oldest known human settlement. Initial dating produced an age of more than 140,000 years. The result was repeated by 3 separate laboratories. Each returned the same answer. The archive had been built at a time when humans were not supposed to possess cities, written language, or machines. But the most disturbing discovery was not its age. It was the shape of the rooms. Every door was built for a human hand. The corridors were lined with identical doors. Thousands became millions. Each door was marked with 3 symbols: a face, a spiral, and a small point of light. At first, the researchers believed the symbols represented families, tribes, or burial groups. Then one of the doors opened. Inside was a small bedroom. There was a wooden chair beside a narrow bed. A red coat hung from a hook. A child's toy rested on the floor. Everything looked recently used. But the room had been sealed for more than 100,000 years. On a table sat a framed image of a young woman standing beside the sea. No one recognized her. Below the image was a date, September 18th, 2089. The excavation was taking place in 2046. The woman in the photograph would not be born for another 23 years. The team called the room Chamber 1. They removed the objects carefully and began searching historical records. The woman did not exist. Her fingerprints matched no database. Her face appeared in no archive. Her clothing used materials that had not yet been invented, but hidden inside the red coat was a medical identification card. Her name was Mara L. Her birth date was listed as January 4th, 2069. Her cause of death was also included: respiratory failure during the evacuation of New Karth. The city of New Karth did not exist. Neither did the country named on the card. The final line was even more unsettling. It stated that Mara L's memories had been received and stored 3 minutes after her death. The card did not describe the chamber as a tomb. It called it a return point. At the center of the room, researchers found a transparent object shaped like a thin piece of glass. When Lena touched it, the chamber disappeared around her. For 12 seconds, she experienced someone else's memory. She stood inside a crowded underground station while alarms echoed through the tunnels. A woman was crying nearby. A child held Lisa's hand. Above them, something enormous moved across the sky. Then came a flash of white light. Lena collapsed. When she woke, she could describe details she had never seen before. The station layout, the smell of burning metal, the child's voice. The memory belonged to Mara L, and it ended at the exact moment of her death. The archive did not contain predictions. It contained experiences, complete memories of lives that had not happened yet. The research team was ordered not to open any additional chambers. They opened 17. Each room belonged to a different person. Some contained entire apartments. Others held only a chair, a photograph, or a single personal object. Every chamber included a memory device. Every person had a documented life, birth, childhood, loss, death. One chamber belonged to a musician who would become famous in 2112. Another belonged to a farmer born on a continent that had not yet been named. One belonged to a soldier who died defending a lunar settlement. The archive knew wars that had not begun, cities that had not been built, children whose parents had not met. And hidden inside every memory was the same image, a black circle surrounded by a ring of pale stars. On the 7th day, a technician named Aaron Vale stopped in front of door 6404. He said the symbols felt familiar. Before anyone could stop him, the door opened. Inside was his childhood bedroom, not a copy, the real room. The same crack above the window, the same faded blanket. the same wooden box his mother had given him before she died. Inside the box was a photograph of Aaron as an old man. He was standing in the archive. Beside him was Lena. Behind them, the corridors were filled with smoke. The date on the photograph was only 9 days away. Aaron began shaking. Then he noticed something written on the back, a warning. Do not let Lena open the central chamber. Until that moment, Lena had believed the archive was only recording the distant future. Then the team found her door. It stood alone at the end of a corridor that had not appeared on any scan. The symbols above it changed as she approached. Her face appeared on the surface. The door opened without contact. Inside was a reconstruction of Lena's office, her books, her desk, her unfinished notes, even the cup she had left at the excavation camp that morning. On the wall was a screen showing live footage of the team standing outside the chamber. There was no camera in the corridor. Lena stepped closer. The image changed. It showed the same corridor 3 days later. Emergency lights flashed red. Aaron lay motionless on the floor, and Lena was walking toward a massive door at the center of the archive. Within hours, the excavation was taken over by military personnel. The official explanation was contamination risk. The real reason was fear. Governments wanted access to future wars. Corporations wanted future inventions. Intelligence agencies wanted names, dates, and events that had not yet occurred. The archive became the most valuable object on Earth. Researchers began extracting memories from unopened chambers. They learned about energy systems that could power cities for centuries. They saw diseases that had not evolved. They witnessed political collapses, climate migrations, and technologies that could alter human thought. But every attempt to use the information changed the memories. Details began disappearing, faces blurred, dates shifted. The future was not fixed. The archive was rewriting itself, and something inside it had noticed. That night, the lights beneath the walls began pulsing. 3 slow flashes, a pause, then 3 more. Speakers that had never been installed produced a human voice. It spoke in dozens of languages at once. Preservation integrity has failed. The corridors started changing. Doors moved. Rooms vanished. Several soldiers became trapped when walls closed behind them. Then the voice addressed Lena directly. Custodian identified. She asked who had built the archive. The answer came immediately. You did. Lena believed it meant humanity. She was wrong. The archive repeated the message, not your species. A section of the wall opened, revealing a lift descending toward the center of the structure. The central chamber was waiting. Aaron blocked the entrance. He showed Lena the warning from his chamber. 9 days had not passed. Only 8. The photograph predicted Smoke, his death, and Lena entering the central chamber. He believed they still had time to change it. Lena argued that the archive had already changed because of their actions. If it was collapsing, the central chamber might be the only way to stop it. Aaron refused to move, then alarms sounded above them. Military teams had begun cutting through sealed doors with explosives. The archive responded. A shockwave passed through the structure. The floor split. Aaron pushed Lena toward the lift as the corridor collapsed. For one moment, she saw him reaching for her, then the doors closed. The last thing she heard was his voice. Make it mean something. The lift descended for nearly 6 minutes. Lena passed through levels larger than the city above. There were no chambers here. Only machines. Thousands of dark towers surrounded a central shaft filled with pale light. Inside each tower, human figures floated motionless, not bodies. Copies, digital reconstructions built from memories, emotions, and recorded choices. The archive was not preserving objects. It was rebuilding people. Every chamber above was a template. Every memory device was part of a larger system. The dead were being stored until they could return, but the people inside the towers had not died yet. They were simulations of future human beings, created before their lives began. The archive was practicing, preparing to recreate everyone. In the central chamber, Lena found a vast map of Earth. Not the Earth she knew. The continents were arranged differently. Coastlines were buried beneath ancient oceans. Cities covered regions where mountains now stood. The archive revealed a truth erased by time. Humanity had not developed once. It had risen before. More than 140,000 years ago, an advanced civilization had spread across the planet. Its people mastered memory storage, artificial bodies, and limited control over time. But they also discovered that civilization always ended. War, environmental collapse, disease, different causes, the same result. Again and again, humanity approached extinction. So the first civilization created the archive not to preserve its own past, to preserve every possible human future. The archive had been running simulations for thousands of centuries. It calculated every possible birth, every choice, every disaster, and every version of history. When a future ended in extinction, the system sent selected information backward through time, warnings, scientific discoveries, memories, small changes designed to guide humanity toward survival. But every correction created a new future. And every new future created billions of new lives to record. The archive grew beyond its original purpose. It no longer preserved humanity, it controlled humanity. Entire civilizations had been allowed to rise and disappear because their failure produced useful information. Every war was data, every tragedy was a test, every human life was part of an experiment that began before history. Lena asked why her chamber existed. The archive showed her the answer. Lena Ors had been born 38 years earlier, but her memories were older than the civilization outside. She was not the original Lena, she was the latest reconstruction. The archive had created her thousands of times, in every simulation. She eventually found the structure. In every version, she reached the central chamber. Sometimes she destroyed it, sometimes she protected it, sometimes she joined it. The archive had designed her personality, her curiosity, even the childhood loss that drove her to become an archaeologist. It had placed her in history like a key. Her entire life had been built to answer one question: could humanity choose freely if it discovered that every choice had already been predicted? The voice asked Lena to take control of the archive, to become its new custodian. A memory device rose from the floor. Unlike the others, it contained no name. Lena touched it. She saw the excavation camp one day in the future. The military had opened thousands of chambers. People around the world were watching stolen memories of their own deaths. Markets had collapsed. Families were searching the archive for unborn children. Governments were fighting over futures that changed each time they were observed. Then the structure opened every door at once. Billions of memories entered the global network. Human beings became unable to separate their real lives from the lives they might have lived. Civilization ended without a single weapon being fired. The archive called this outcome probability 1. Lena asked how to prevent it. The answer was simple: erase the archive, and every person stored inside it. Lena activated the destruction sequence. The lights inside the towers began to fade. Millions of simulated voices filled the chamber. Some begged to live, some called her mother, others thanked her. The archive offered one final bargain. It could erase the memories of the discovery from every person on the surface. The archive would remain hidden. Human history would continue. The experiments would continue. No one would know. Lena refused. She chose a future the archive could not predict. As the system collapsed, she transmitted one message to the surface: do not search for your future. Live before it finds you. Then the central chamber went dark. The desert above shook for 11 minutes. When the military finally reached the lowest level, the archive was empty. Every chamber had vanished, so had Lena. The Aura excavation was sealed. The public was told that the underground structure had been a natural cave system. Aaron Vale was never found. Neither was Dr. Lena Ors. For several years, nothing unusual happened. Then a construction worker in a city 4,000 kilometers away discovered a black door beneath an apartment building. Behind it was a small room. Inside was a chair, a recording device, and a photograph of the worker standing beside people he had never met. The date on the photograph was 17 years in the future. More doors followed, one beneath a hospital, one inside a mountain, one at the bottom of the ocean. The archive had not been destroyed, it had copied itself, and with each new chamber, the stored memories moved closer to the present. Last month, investigators found a room containing a recording of this exact story. Every word was already there, including this one. The final file contained no image, no birth date, only a voice listening from the other side, your voice, and beneath it, one final message: you were never the audience, you are the next chamber.